2 p.m. in Canberra, March 26, 2026. A high-density digital file lands on the encrypted server of the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. It contains 35,000 electronic signatures, verified and authenticated. The demand is singular and uncompromising. Not a single cent of Australian taxpayer money is to be spent on the upcoming visit of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This is not just a petition. This is a diplomatic tactical strike. The response from the Montecito camp came less than 4 hours later, and it has sent shockwaves through the Commonwealth press. A spokesperson for the couple dismissed the public outcry as a moot point, claiming the trip is being funded privately. It was a cold, 3-sentence rebuttal that experts say has backfired spectacularly. Commentators like Kinsey Schofield are already sounding the alarm, noting that the tone reeks of animosity and a staggering lack of self-awareness. Schofield pointed out that by hitting back so arrogantly, the couple is only giving these headlines more oxygen, fueling the very fire they are trying to extinguish. But here is what the public statement didn't mention. We have analysed the internal logistics under document Alpha Uniform Sierra Echo Charlie 2026. In the world of high-level international travel, privately funded is a hollow phrase. Even if every business-class seat and hotel suite is paid for out of their own pockets, the hidden infrastructure costs tell a different story. When a high-profile figure enters Australian soil, the mechanism of the Australian Federal Police is automatically triggered. This involves advanced intelligence sweeps, motorcade coordination, and the deployment of specialist tactical units. These are not private contractors. These are public servants funded by the very people who just signed that petition. The moot point defense falls apart the moment a single police siren is activated to clear traffic for their arrival. Take a look at the data. In 2018, Australia treated this couple with absolute adoration. They were at the height of their popularity, a royal fairy tale in the flesh. But fast forward to March 27, 2026, and the reception has turned radioactive. If you are watching this and believe that public figures should be held accountable for the public resources they consume, hit the like button right now. It helps this investigation reach more people who are tired of the royal entitlement playbook. And if you want to stay ahead of the next breaking update on the Montecito files, make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on. The shift in sentiment is not an accident. It is a calculated response to a pattern of behavior. Writers like Michael Loftus are now describing the pair as modern-day gypsies, moving from Vancouver to the United Kingdom, then to Beverly Hills, and now hiding behind the gates of Montecito. Loftus remarked that they seem to be turning into a wandering act, where the secret plan is just to keep moving before the neighbours find out who they really are. He even joked that Prince Harry might own stock in a moving company just to keep himself employed. But the most damaging label isn't nomad, it is taker. Reports emerging from Page 6 indicate that the neighbours in Montecito have reached a breaking point. One source stated clearly that people are actively avoiding them. No one wants to be seen with them. There is a growing awareness that they are takers with zero self-awareness, exhausted by the constant drama and the one-sided nature of their relationships. They have been accused of asking to borrow private jets and vacation homes, focusing entirely on what they can extract from others to lessen their own financial burden. This is the context behind the Australian petition. The 35,000 citizens who signed that document aren't just worried about their budget. They are reacting to a global reputation of freeloading. They are seeing the same pattern that the residents of Montecito are seeing, a couple that operates on entitlement rather than contribution. What do you think? Is the moot point defense a legitimate explanation? Or is it a calculated PR move to cover up the massive security costs Australia will be forced to absorb? Drop a comment below with the word accountability if you think they should stay home, or welcome if you think the backlash is unfair. We read every single one of your insights. The timeline is accelerating. With the visit scheduled for next month, the Australian Federal Police are facing a logistical nightmare and a public relations disaster. The question is no longer whether they are coming, but what kind of reception is waiting for them at the airport. This isn't 2018 anymore. The adoration is gone. What remains is a cold, hard ledger of costs and a public that has finally had enough. Stay tuned. The next chapter of the Montecito breakdown is about to be unsealed. The investigation into the Montecito files reveals a psychological and financial pattern that experts are now calling the social resource exploitation loop. It is a sophisticated mechanism of survival used by those who possess high-value titles but lack the liquid capital to maintain the lifestyle those titles demand. As of March 27, 2026, the data suggests that the royal brand is no longer a golden ticket in California. It has become a liability. To understand why the neighbors of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are reportedly exhausted, we have to look at the mechanics of the taker strategy. It begins with the activation phase. Upon arriving in a high-net-worth enclave like Montecito, the royal title is used as a master key. It provides entry into the most exclusive social circles where privacy is the ultimate currency. In the beginning, billionaire neighbors were intrigued. The novelty of having a duke and duchess next door opened doors to private dinners and elite gatherings. However, the strategy quickly shifts into the manipulation phase. Once inside these circles, the requests begin. Reliable sources have detailed a recurring pattern, asking to borrow private jets for international travel or requesting the use of sprawling vacation estates for security reasons. To the outside observer, it looks like a high-end friendship. But to those on the inside, it is a calculated move to offload the massive financial burden of their lifestyle onto others. By borrowing a jet worth $50 million, they maintain the image of global elites without the overhead costs of fuel, crew, and maintenance. Then comes the PR execution. When these arrangements are discovered, the Sussex communications team doesn't call it a favor. They frame it as a strategic partnership or a collaboration between like-minded philanthropists. This is how the mechanism stays hidden. It transforms a one-sided extraction of resources into a narrative of mutual influence. But this only works as long as the Sussex brand holds value. The current fracture point in Montecito occurred when social creditors realized the debt would never be repaid. In the world of the ultra-wealthy, relationships are built on an unspoken code of reciprocity. If you provide a jet, you expect access, prestige, or a return of influence. But the reports coming out this morning suggest the return on investment has vanished. Neighbors are finding that being associated with the couple brings unwanted paparazzi, legal scrutiny, and a tarnished reputation by association. The fallout is now visible. We are seeing a phenomenon described as social quarantining. Insiders tell Page 6 that the elite residents of the area are no longer just annoyed, they are actively avoiding any contact. No one wants to be seen with them. The gatekeepers of Montecito have effectively initiated an information blackout to protect their own privacy and assets from being the next resource in the so-called Sussex loop. Michael Loftus described this perfectly when he noted that they are running out of places to land. When you burn through the goodwill of the wealthiest people in America, where do you go next? The mechanism requires a constant supply of new givers, but the global awareness of the taker label is making the search for new hosts nearly impossible. The ledger is out of balance. As the gates of Montecito's most powerful homes remain firmly shut, the couple is facing a reality they never anticipated, a social bankruptcy that no royal title can fix. But the most chilling part of the dossier isn't who is avoiding them. It's the rumors of what happens when a taker is finally backed into a corner with nowhere left to move. The next 24 hours may reveal a desperate new tactic in their playbook. The investigation into the Sussex dossier reveals a pattern that defies the traditional royal journey. When we map their movement since 2020, we don't see a path to freedom. We see a trail of systematic ejections. Experts are now labeling this the nomadic cycle of the Sussexes, a recurring loop of arrival, exploitation, and eventual social collapse. The first domino fell on January 8, 2020, in London. The Megxit Declaration was meant to be a masterstroke of independence. Instead, the immediate consequence was a total decapitation of their operational power. They lost their Buckingham Palace office, their royal staff, and the structural protection that had shielded them for years. They didn't just walk away, they were unplugged from the source. By March 2020, the cycle moved to Vancouver Island, Canada. This was the first major reality check. Within 4 weeks, the Canadian government issued a definitive no regarding their security costs. The message was clear: if you aren't working for the Crown, you aren't a priority for the taxpayer. The immediate fallout was a hasty retreat across the border before the lockdown intensified. The pattern of the taker. Continue. The pattern of the taker became undeniable in July 2020 in Beverly Hills. Living in a mansion owned by Tyler Perry, the couple operated on borrowed resources. But the consequences were immediate. Their presence created a security vacuum that pressured the entire neighborhood's infrastructure. Drones, paparazzi, and lawsuits followed. The Beverly Hills experiment proved that even the most generous hosts eventually find the Sussex circus too heavy a burden to carry. From 2021 to 2025, the struggle was centered in Montecito. This was supposed to be the era of a content empire. Multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify were signed with massive fanfare. But as the years passed, the data told a different story. The freeze began. Contracts were either cancelled or quietly shelved due to a lack of deliverable content and dwindling audience retention. They had the platform, but they had run out of things to say. The most devastating blow to their social standing landed on February 15, 2026. The Variety report titled "The Demise of Decorum" laid bare a reality that had been whispered about for months. The Hollywood elite were actively ghosting the couple. It wasn't a scandal. It was an eviction from the inner circle. Today, March 27, 2026, the cycle has reached a global pincer point. In California, they are facing domestic isolation, with neighbors reportedly designing their lives to avoid any chance encounter. Simultaneously, across the Pacific, the 35,000 signatures in Australia represent a firewall against their brand. The Australian public has learned from the British and Canadian experiences. They are preemptively striking against the taker mechanism before it can even land on their shores. This timeline exposes a chilling truth. They aren't just moving homes, they are moving away from the consequences of their previous failures. Each location provides a temporary sanctuary until the exhaustion factor kicks in. But as of this morning, the map is running out of empty spaces. When you have been rejected by the palace, the Canadian government, the Hollywood elite, and now the Australian taxpayer, the question is no longer where you want to go. The question is, who is left to take the call? The walls are closing in on the Montecito nomads. The dossier suggests that their next move won't be a choice, it will be a necessity. But with the taker label now permanently etched into their global profile, the hospitality of the world is officially at its limit. What happens when the world's most famous wanderers have nowhere left to run? The final transmission from the Montecito files may arrive sooner than anyone expected. 9 a.m. sharp on the morning of March 27, 2026. Inside Studio 6A at the SiriusXM headquarters, the air was thick with a calculated, manufactured silence. Howard Stern, the man who once dominated the airwaves with raw, unfiltered chaos, leaned into his microphone to deploy a different kind of weapon, the open loop. Stern's target wasn't a living rival. He reached back nearly 30 years into the past, invoking the name of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. "I knew the real Carolyn," Stern whispered to his audience. "We had many, many conversations, more than casual. She was lovely. But I know enough to keep my mouth shut about that." This is not just nostalgia. In the world of elite PR strategy, this is a maneuver known as halo excavation. When a public figure's current market value begins to plateau or descend into a freefall, they are often advised to tether their brand to an immortal icon. By hinting at a secret, deep connection with a tragic figure who can no longer speak for themselves, Stern isn't just sharing a memory, he is attempting to tap into her enduring mystique. But the data in the Montecito files shows that this isn't an isolated incident. This is a global epidemic of legacy clout chasing. And its most prominent practitioners are allegedly residing behind the gates of a mansion they are reportedly struggling to maintain. Analyze the mechanics of Prince Harry's public appearances over the last 24 months, and the parallels are striking. Just as Stern uses the memory of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy to create a spike in listener attention, Prince Harry has repeatedly drawn upon the legacy of Princess Diana to sustain media relevance. According to internal archives from New York-based PR firms dating back to the late 90s, there is a specific psychological protocol for this, the silent authority play. The play works in 3 steps. First, establish proximity to a deceased icon. Second, claim to possess a private truth about them that the rest of the world lacks. Third, refuse to elaborate, citing respect for privacy. This creates a permanent curiosity loop that keeps the media engaged with your narrative. However, the breaking reports from this morning suggest that public outrage fatigue is finally setting in. Critics are pointing out the blatant opportunism. Howard Stern only decided to break his silence on Carolyn Bessette Kennedy exactly as a hit TV show about her life dominates the cultural conversation. It is a parasitic link. The Sussexes are facing the same backlash. When their Netflix numbers dipped, the references to Princess Diana spiked. When the Australian petition reached 35,000 signatures, the generational trauma narrative was immediately reactivated. But the dossier reveals a fatal flaw in this strategy. You can only trade on the past for so long before the present catches up with you. Internal records from SiriusXM insiders suggest that Stern's cryptic comments were met with internal eye-rolling. The consensus: it was a desperate attempt to stay in the headlines. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the cost of this strategy is even higher. By constantly looking backward to find their value, they have failed to build anything of substance in the present. As of this hour, the taker label isn't just about borrowing private jets or mansions. It's about taking from the past. It's about mining the tragedies of history to sustain a lifestyle in 2026 that is rapidly becoming unsustainable. The Montecito files indicate that when you lose the respect of your neighbors and the support of taxpayers, the ghosts of the past are the only allies you have left. But as the social quarantine in California intensifies, even those ghosts may not be enough to save them from what comes next. The final phase of the social resource collapse is about to be triggered, and the documents we are reviewing suggest it will happen in a place no one expected. The intelligence gathered from the Montecito files, cross-referenced with the 35,000 signatures, allows us to map the probable trajectories for the remainder of 2026. As of March 27th, the data suggests we are no longer looking at a simple public relations crisis. We are looking at a survival struggle. Our analytical modeling has identified 3 distinct scenarios, categorized by probability and impact on the global royal brand. The first trajectory: quiet redemption, 10% probability. In this scenario, the upcoming visit to Australia proceeds with zero fanfare. The couple pays for every expense out of their own pockets, including private security operating independently of local law enforcement. They engage in genuine, behind-the-scenes philanthropic work. No Netflix cameras, no staged press coverage. The result would be a slow, steady restoration of public trust. However, the financial burden of the Montecito estate, estimated at over $12 million annually, makes this path economically unrealistic. Philanthropy without visibility does not generate the revenue required to sustain their current lifestyle. The second trajectory: siege mentality, 30% probability. This is the Montecito bunker strategy. Citing hostility and lack of state-funded security, the couple cancels the trip entirely. They retreat deeper into their California enclave, transforming isolation into content. This could take the form of another tell-all book or a documentary exposing alleged betrayals by elite neighbors. While this may generate short-term revenue, it would mark a terminal decline in their social standing. You cannot alienate your neighbors and expect continued acceptance in elite circles. The third and most likely trajectory: Commonwealth collision, 60% probability. This is the high-risk, high-reward path. Under financial pressure and contractual obligations, the couple proceeds with the Australia trip, potentially tied to pre-sold streaming rights. The sequence is predictable. Upon arrival, they are met with organized protests driven by the 35,000 signature movement. At some point, a security incident emerges. Whether genuine or exaggerated, it becomes the trigger. Their legal team leverage the situation to demand taxpayer-funded protection or initiate legal action. The consequences would be severe. This would not just be a controversial trip. It would mark the moment the Commonwealth severs its emotional ties. If they attempt to extract public funds after clear rejection, the taker label becomes permanent. As we move into the final hours of this March 27th briefing, the global sentiment clock is ticking. Financial data and social patterns point to one conclusion: the Montecito nomads are running out of runway. They need a decisive win in Australia. But the very mechanism they have relied on has created a firewall they can no longer bypass. The next document we have obtained is the most sensitive in the entire file. It involves a legal maneuver currently being discussed behind closed doors in Santa Barbara. A move that could redefine royal privacy forever. The question is no longer whether a collision will occur. It is who will be left to pick up the pieces when the dust settles in Canberra. While media attention focuses on social rejection, a far more dangerous development is unfolding behind the scenes. In Santa Barbara County, the social quarantine is evolving into a legal confrontation. Sources within California's legal community confirm that a high-powered law firm is drafting a civil complaint on behalf of a coalition of anonymous high-net-worth residents. This is not about gossip. This is a community order violation case, with potentially devastating consequences. The complaint centers on two primary issues: unauthorized low-altitude drone activity and the disruptive nature of private security operations. In Montecito, privacy is not optional, it is contractual. By attracting constant attention, the couple is being accused of creating a continuous nuisance. The deadline for this filing is April 15, 2026. If submitted, it could trigger legal mechanisms that make continued residence in Montecito untenable. This is the Montecito ultimatum. If they lose Montecito, they lose more than a home, they lose their final sanctuary. From London to Vancouver, from Beverly Hills to Montecito, each relocation has followed the same pattern: arrival, integration, exhaustion, rejection. And each cycle is accelerating. Now the question becomes unavoidable. If California closes its doors, where do they go next? The United Kingdom has withdrawn protection. Canada has refused financial support. Australia has signaled resistance. The cycle is nearing its final stage. They are becoming global outliers, royal in title, but unwelcome in territory. We are monitoring Santa Barbara court filings in real time. If the complaint is filed, the Montecito era ends instantly, and the world may witness something unprecedented: a royal eviction, unfolding live on the global stage. What is your take on this legal escalation? Are the neighbors justified in protecting their privacy? Or is this a coordinated campaign against Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this investigation valuable, like and subscribe for more. The April 15th deadline is approaching, and one final document regarding the Sussex exit strategy is still being verified. You'll want to be here when that story breaks. Stay tuned to the Montecito files. The truth is coming out, one document at a time.